Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Matthew Bronfman, and it's my honor to serve as chairman of the program committee and a member of the board of directors of the 92nd Street Y. And it's a pleasure to welcome you here to 92Y Tribeca. It is my great privilege to introduce our panel this evening for this wonderful event. Our moderator tonight is Matthew Bishop, American business editor and New York bureau chief of The Economist. He is a co-author with Mike Green of the important book, Philanthropy, How Giving Can Change the World. Matthew continues his series tonight with a conversation on the future of philanthropy with two very special guests. First, my uncle, Charles Bronfman, of the Seagram corporate family, started devoting himself to philanthropic causes at the age of 17. For much of his adult life, he worked for Seagram, rising to serve as co-chairman. He was also the founding owner of the Montreal Expos and has been chairman of Core Industries Limited in Israel. In 1986, he and his late wife decided to concentrate their philanthropic efforts and founded the Andrea and Charles Bronfman Philanthropies, which now engages in $220 million worth of programmatic activities and has been hailed as a model foundation. Jeffrey Solomon is the president of the Andrea and Charles Bronfman Philanthropies. Jeffrey is a widely recognized expert on philanthropy and has written more than 80 articles on the subject and served on numerous not-for-profit boards, including the Council on Federations, where he chaired the Committee on Ethics and Practice and was the chief operating officer of UGA Federation here in New York. Together, Charles and Jeffrey have just released the important book, The Art of Giving, which will be their topic this evening.
I've been eagerly anticipating this discussion because I think they come at the same set of questions that Michael Green and I have come at in our book, which is sort of the coming together of philanthropy and business thinking. But they come from it as practitioners, a professional. We call them philanthrocrats in the book, rather disparagingly, but I'm sure you take that with a pinch of salt. And then Charles, who's been giving away a lot of money. Charles, when you started your philanthropy then, where did you look to for guidance, advice, and so forth?
That's probably the problem, Matthew. We made a couple of major errors in the beginning. I think we funded the foundation with too much money and then hired people.
Too much money?
Yeah, yeah, at the time, because once you put money into something, you say, well, let's go spend it. And that is a mistake, number one. Number two, we hired people without really thinking it all through. And number three, we entered into a couple of programs that were frankly disasters. Through those mistakes, though, we learned a lot and changed management and started to really focus. And from the time we started focusing, I believe that the foundation and what we were about in philanthropy became quite successful. And then we were very, very fortunate when we were moving to New York in running into Jeff Solomon, and that has been a tremendously fortuitous relationship.
And I think, Matthew, the question about mistakes is such an important one, because too often in the foundation world and the nonprofit world, nobody wants to own up to mistakes. And Charles, at the time of doing the Israel experience, the goal of the Israel experience was to have more high school kids go to Israel than before the investment was made. Well, 5 years later, there were no more high school students going to Israel. So on the face of it, it was a mistake. But we were able to analyze what went wrong. What went wrong with the partners, what went wrong with the economic model, what went wrong when you demanded kids to go for 8 weeks, which was the standard at the time, what went wrong when you were playing to the high school market, which got the most engaged young Jews, but you had to market to both the parent and the child. Well, take all of those mistakes and you have the unprecedented success of Birthright. It is 18 to 26. There had never been an educational program aimed at that era. It focuses on educational standards with quality assurance. The economics are controlled by the central franchise type operation. We put for-profits and not-for-profits in competition with one another, which made both of them better. And 10 years later.
And it was a 10-year thing rather than an 8-week thing.
That's right. It was 10 days, not 8 weeks. 10 years later, we've had over 250,000 participants. And by every outside measure, it's been an extraordinary success.
I wanted to ask you a question about motivation. You know, what motivated you to become a philanthropist? And does motivation actually matter very much?
Well, that's the second part of the title of the book, where the soul meets a business plan. And we think that unless something is burning in your soul, it's not going to make a heck of a lot of difference to you. And I think the reason that I and we decided to have a foundation is sort of a little bit strange. I knew that there was something out there that I wanted to do, and I was quite happy following in my family's footsteps of giving to this and giving to that and giving to the other thing, the normal umbrella things. But I'd seen my father do things during World War II that were quite extraordinary. The depths of the war, he commissioned Stephen Leacock, a Canadian humorist, to do a book on Canada, the foundations of its future. Now here was a man in 1940, 1941, at the most terrible time in the war, commissioning somebody to write a book about the future and why the future looks bright. Then a second time around in the 50s, he commissioned the finest artists in Canada, chosen by the Royal Canadian Academy, to do a series of the cities of Canada, and sent that around the world to show that Canada was more than a mounted policeman and an ice cap or an igloo. And of course he had a secondary objective to that, and that was to sell Canadian whiskey, which was his pride and joy. But nonetheless, the way he did it was so creative and so wonderful that I guess that always stayed with me. And I said to myself, somewhere or other there's going to be something we can really do that'll be different. And I guess the creative juices started to flow once we set things up.
And Jeff, what's motivating you? What drew you to this world?
I'm a child of the 60s, child of Holocaust survivors. So I began in this world in Mississippi, being an outside agitator. And going in and choosing a profession in nonprofit management was not surprising in the 60s. I think we are seeing that trend begin to recur now among young people, and the idea of being in public service. So that's how it started, and I was very fortunate and blessed to have had many good opportunities along the way.
So the government actually is foregoing a great deal of money that it could be receiving in taxes by enabling society to do its thing, to go ahead and be philanthropists. And de Tocqueville said in the 1860s? 1830s, that this was the most generous of countries because it didn't trust its government, so therefore people were going to do it themselves. Now, you have to put that with this being the last bastion of capitalism in the world, and the society has said...
Well, there's China now, isn't there?
Well, yeah. I think their norms are slightly different. But if you take the capitalism, combine it with freedom, and combine that with responsibility, you get you get a societal norm, and the societal norm winds up that the United States is the most generous. The society of the United States is the most generous people in the world, and I think it all is a matter of what one may call the society norms.
And you think that is a sense of responsibility to give back, and it's part of that norm?
I would say it's part of the society.
Right.
And philanthropy is a big part of what makes the United States of America as meaningful and strong as it is.
So on that note, I'd really like to thank Charles and Jeff for such a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much.